do I feel like I failed? Of course. Have I had a lot of really smart and wonderful and caring entrepreneurs reach out and try to reframe that for me? Sure, and maybe at one point I'll feel that way. But yeah, it sucks.
He helped build Massachusetts' first vertically integrated social equity cannabis company, raised millions, won awards, and still had to close the doors. I'm Jason Reposa, and on High Functioning, we unpack the real costs and rebounds of big bets. Today's guest is Carl Giannone. We cover the fallout from shutting down trade routes, where he's aiming next, and the LinkedIn dust-ups that keep the industry watching.
Fun fact, cannabis was my only job as an adult where I got healthcare provided for me.
The NDAs are on, but the gloves are off. Let's dive in.
Well, thanks for having me, Jason, between two lightsabers, is that?
Exactly.
So I'm Carl, co-founder of Trade Routes. We were the state's first vertically integrated social equity operator. I did everything from help, with the licensure process, co-led, over $10 million in fundraising, board's chair, led strategy, marketing, brand, and now I'm helping wind down what we once built.
Wind down. And some, we've known each other for a bit.
Yep.
So I'm maybe a little bit snarky, and I apologize in advance. Is it a failure? Did you fail?
I mean, it's interesting, right? So do I feel like I failed? Of course. When I have, 30 coworkers to say, you put your trust in me, but now, we no longer can provide for you. When I have to tell investors that they invested in us, partners who we owe money, those hard phone calls, right?
I think they're listening right now.
I'm sure you are, Jason.
Yeah.
In that case, yeah, I feel like I failed. Now, have I had a lot of really smart and wonderful and caring entrepreneurs reach out and try to reframe that for me? Sure, and maybe at one point I'll feel that way. But yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. And so I'm we don't have to go obviously into the details because we don't want to disclose anything that we don't want to necessarily have on air. But we'll kind of dive into some of these things. So you guys started first social equity, is that what you said? First social equity launched in Massachusetts?
So the first social equity vertical.
Meaning that's because you have
cultivation, manufacturing, and retail.
I think of the store because we sold products to your store, but yes, you actually had the plants growing behind it. Right?
There was another 13,000 square feet in that building beside just that store. Wow. So
I didn't realize it was that big. That's right. From the outside, if you look just at the dispensary side, it was how many square feet?
3,000.
Yeah,
right?
and then there's 13,000 behind it for the grows and manufacturing and stuff like that.
Yep.
So it's vertical, right?
Yep. So we actually applied as general applicants. So originally the social equity rules were that Jesse, my business partner, would have to own 50% of the company. We just did some math and it was with dilution and all of it, that wasn't going to happen. They then lowered the threshold to 10% and we were already licensed. So it was and then our banker, Matt, from Avidia, who we were with at the time, reached out and he's and our banking fees were, I think it was 20 bips on all deposits plus another 40 for cash or something like that.
For
plus,
investors, the funds coming in?
For any, I think that was once you started operations. I think that was post revenue.
What year was this?
1920, probably, maybe 20?
20? Yeah, because I remember that because I was shopping for banks and I remember our bank, since we were manufacturing, where they literally were it's $2,000 a month just for the bank account.
I forget what the fees are, and Avidia was wonderful, and I don't want to, but it was incredibly high.
Yeah.
And so Matt reached out. He's we're doing this pilot program. Is Jesse part of the social equity program? And they had just opened up the second cohort. And it was no. He's well, we'll lower your banking rates to free if you do that. And Jesse's well, I'm going to class. So
because you had to go through the classes in order to get the designation officially.
Yep.
Right.
So went through that, and so we got our licenses as general applicants, but then Jesse took the program and so we became the first vertical. There are a couple more, but we were the only one that ever did all three, including extraction. Like there were manufacturers that made I'm not making pre-rolls, but like, you know, the heavy science behind extraction, we were the only ones.
Oh, that's fantastic.
To my knowledge.
I've been to your lab, actually. Impressive group of people. And obviously my heart goes out to those people who were there. And we've obviously made a lot of friends with your team as well, you know, through the years at all the conferences and stuff like that.
I've popped your balloons, Jason.
That's right. You helped pop balloons at one point at NECAN. So when it comes to the like day-to-day stuff, you were kind of, what was your focus? You were the numbers guy behind the scenes, or were you like,
No.
You weren't doing extraction necessarily though, right? Or were you?
No, so it's actually, it's funny, you know, my background, I was a buy-side guy, never sold anything. You know, my job was to make a pile of money bigger.
Right.
You know,
And then you get that
institutional money, and
percentage
I got a
fee.
piece, right?
Yeah.
So, fun fact, cannabis was my only job as an adult where I got health care provided for me.
Mm.
So that was always K1 or 1099, right? So, you know, I made sure when we were raising money that, you know, I was a trader. It was more physics than finance, right? So I wasn't going through companies' financials. I was looking to see, I just assumed that if a market participant was able to move the price of an asset, they were probably smart money. Because if they were dumb money, they go away, and right. So that's an assumption. So I didn't need, you know, sort of like the whole thing of like, you know, if you're in the woods and you see a bear, you don't need to outrun the bear. You just need to outrun your buddy.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you know, sort of the same thing. Like I didn't need to know why you were doing what you were doing. I just needed to see what you were doing.
And you applied that to cannabis in a sense?
So my background in finance was, I was a trader, not, I wasn't a finance guy.
Yeah.
And I made sure that when we were raising money, that my investors knew that, you know, I wasn't sitting there going through financials. My job was sort of markets, you know, the understanding the madness of crowds, right? And so originally I was brought into Trade Routes. Jesse offered me 5% of the company, full ratchet anti-dilution protection, to raise $2.2 million.
Good.
We raised
20?
2018.
Okay, so this is because
This is, and then I was going to do that and then just go back to my life.
Right.
Wound up moving up to Wareham. We had more partners originally. It was just the two of us. And so really at Trade Routes, I did what nobody wanted to, could do, thought was important, you know. And so, I mean, that's how I wound up doing social media. I mean, I had a LinkedIn page that was dormant. If you look, was dormant prior to cannabis. But it was just like, well, you know, Jesse had background in extraction, cultivation, and, you know, he was managing the team and all of that stuff. And so it was like, oh, okay, well, I'll do that. So my other job was supporting Jesse in making decisions. So taking a look at the market and going, okay, this is, you know, sort of applying skills from my past life and going, okay, you know, this is where I think things are going. So then the ops team can react accordingly. And a lot of the value I added in that role was to advise not to do things. Right. Like, let's not, you know, Jesse would always talk about skate where the puck is going. You know, it's like, yes, I know the numbers right now are saying this. However, if you look at all these other forces, that's going to change. This is why. And yeah.
I get it. Yeah. So when I think about that stuff, I think about like in 2018, especially when you hear the 2018, 2019, that was the green rush. So that 2.2 that you were hired to raise, what happened?
So we raised. So there's a gentleman named Nick who's the CEO and founder. I don't know if he's the CEO, chief legal officer of Cannabis, and which is a privately held multi-state operator. Crush it, Illinois and Missouri. And I forget how we were introduced to Nick, but we joke that he's Yoda because he just says sort of like wise things in like little snippets. And so I posted this online. We sent him our pro forma that we had, you know, the fancy accountants come up with
the pro forma,
the whole thing. And
weed is going to be $22,000 a pound for
At the time, I think the highest trade in Massachusetts was $6,800 a pound. Netta bought 50 pounds. I think that was the high tech. We were still over $4,000 a pound.
Wow.
Our model was, you know, down to $2, the whole thing, right? And so we sent it off to Nick, and we're on the phone. It's me and Jesse, and he's chewing. It's actually funny. I texted him and I said he remembers. I guess he was having a meatball panini And he just looks at it and he goes, it's wrong. What do you mean it's wrong? He's like, I'm like, where? Yeah, we start to get defensive, right?
Yeah,
it's
of course. It's your pro
like,
forma. My business.
Yes, right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so he's like, I don't know where it's wrong, but it's wrong. Just remember, twice as long, twice as much. Well, it was like 4 to 5 times as much and about 3 times as long.
Yeah.
Because we also started building out during COVID, the whole thing. And so we wound up raising 6.8 in equity so the dot-com crash.
Yeah.
There was from peak to low, there was 72% price compression. The pot-com crash, which bottomed out interim bottom in 2020, whatever that was 92%. And so we were raising, at the time was an interim low, at all the negative headlines, all the stuff, wound up raising 6.8, and then things got more expensive, our numbers, and so our investors didn't want to be diluted. So now it's 2021, I think. Maybe I'm off on this. It's whenever like GameStop and all the NFTs and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so now we're offering 12%, 12% senior secured debt when de facto interest rates are negative, right? But people are like, in this part of the risk part of our portfolio, why would we cap our upside when still manage to get that done?
Yeah, because everybody's looking at these meme stocks doing 100% a day or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you're going to allocate 5% of your portfolio to risk, are you going to cap it at a 12% return to a pot company when we had no warrants or anything attached? So all of this was difficult. And so, that was one of my roles at Trade Routes was helping with all of that stuff. But I wasn't the finance guy.
You weren't hands-on, and you weren't also the controller who was looking at the expenses and reconciling books and stuff like that.
No, that was Jesse. And it's funny because Jesse and I will always smirk because his background is construction. He's also the weed guy, right? Yeah. No, but Jesse was the one who built most of the models in trade. Like I would do the PowerPoints. Yeah. I would make the pretty stuff. But Jesse was the one crunching the numbers. Yeah, that wasn't me.
You're the pretty face.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the Queen of England just going.
But that's an important role, obviously, as we know. So shout out to Jesse. I guess where I want to go with this is, obviously, you launch. You guys are probably cranking in the beginning. Some of the early headwinds. What did you meet? Did you have a sense like that dog knows 3 miles out it might be something coming, or?
Yeah, I got the nickname.
Because your pro forma was $2,000 a pound even, and it's like $500 right now.
Yeah. So, dude, I earned the nickname thanks to Jill, Calamity Carl on LinkedIn for when cannabis was still trading above $10 a gram. And so, what had happened, and we took a look and we based our pro forma. I took a look at the 3 legal states plus California. We took a look at possible supply. The CCC was really with their open data. If you spend the time, you could really dig in there, right? And so what we saw was that Massachusetts stayed flat longer than other states. Well, why could that be? Well, you had COVID, and the government said, not only are you virtuous if you stay at home and smoke pot and order Postmates, but we're going to give you a check to do it.
Right.
And so, and at the same time, interest rates went de facto negative, and it was just, champagne and cocaine, just
all day,
right.
Every day.
And so you had all of these potential cannabis entrepreneurs showing their investors, no, Massachusetts is different. It's an East Coast state, but I think the most dangerous words in the English language this time is different, right?
This time it's different.
And so you had just major overcapacity built out. We actually had a meeting with the commission. We called for a Zoom or a Teams, just showing guys, you have a tier relegation provision in the regs, meaning that I think is if you don't sell 75% of your flower within.
That's right. And they never trigger.
And I have email chains and all of it, and it's like, guys, this is going to happen. This is I think the numbers were, I'm not sure, but for every tier 11, every 100,000 square feet that came online, the retail price of an eighth dropped by $1. And so I'm just looking at all of this, and it's like, and I remember a conversation I had. It was at Benzinga, Chicago. It was right. So when we opened up retail, opened up cultivation, cannabis was trading at $12.66 a gram.
And that's flower or distillate?
Flower.
Flower, okay.
Distillate was trading at 28.
20 something, yeah, I bet.
We got our first sales off at 28. Flour, as of the April numbers, I just looked at the CCC stuff, is down to 361 or 331. Disty, I haven't been in the market for a few months, but
Yeah.
I think it was down at 4. You know better.
Oh, yeah, we had, I mean, last year we were getting as low as $2.50 a gram.
Okay. Well, there's also, we could talk about, if you do a little rough calculation and take a look at the amount of marijuana-infused products that are sold in the state, plus the amount that's used in infused pre-rolls, and just do, assume 100 grams per pack, milligrams per package, just, some basic, the amount of distillate that is consumed is more than the available biomass that would be earmarked for distillate to create. So
basically, are you implying that a lot of the product that was supposed to be flour got turned into distillate because they couldn't sell it?
No.
Or are you implying that there's some kind of like backdooring?
Oh, no, it's not the back door. So the CCC is very concerned about the back door.
Of course.
They're letting the front door just wide open. So it's inversion. It's bringing in distillate from other states and then putting it into the Massachusetts market.
What? That's insane.
Yep, and it's happening.
What? That's mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm.
I have some thoughts of how that could potentially happen, because I was actually thinking more through the hemp side.
So there
you can do that.
There could be that too.
Now, I'm not going to blow up anybody's spot here because I don't know about it, but like even I've postulated like 5 years ago when I was just getting to the market. So we're talking like I went to CAC in Taunton, did a tour. Matt Catalano, first guy I ever met in cannabis. So not first, but like one of the first guys.
What a welcoming face.
Yeah, he was just like, "Hey, buddy, what's going on?" And I'm just like talking to him, whatever. It's literally the first tour I've ever done in Massachusetts cannabis. I get in there, and he takes me to the lab, and I go, "Cool." Like I'm kind of familiar with some of the equipment, some of the glass and stuff like that. I'm still kind of learning, and I'm looking, and he goes, "Check this out." And one of the lab guys was like, "Check this out," and he goes, "This is Delta 8," and I go, "Oh, neat. Like, I think I know how to make that. It's like reflux and all this other with acids and stuff like that." And he's like, yeah, we did it just as fun, just see if we could do it from some CBD bed lying around. Or whatever the process was. It's also 5 years ago now, so I can't remember exactly. But like, I remember that being like, and looking at the SOPs for Delta 8 and also getting Delta 8 to Delta 9 or other fractions to get to that level through lab work, chemical conversions. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to myself, like, anything that needs distillate, you can just get it from this instead. You don't need to necessarily grow a plant now. You know what I mean? Like, or you kind of still have to, you don't even have to grow a plant because you can get CBD from fermentation at this point. But like the point being that like, you could just literally take that and put it into your edibles and gummies and stuff like that. And then it's still, the COA still looked very clean and stuff like that, but it didn't necessarily come from a tagged plant and metric from the beginning. There's ways to do, and like the hemp, it's like you can buy from an MDAR licensed provider all these other cannabinoids, right? Potentially in process Delta 9 THC, bring it into your facility. Now it becomes cannabis under the CCC, and then where did that metric tag go? I don't know. But there are some processes around that to even do that, and someone told me how to do it, and we have never touched anything like that. We don't intend to ever do anything like that. But there are ways, if you get creative, to actually like bring in Delta 9 THC into the Massachusetts market and do it compliantly, which is bizarre to me.
There's also, there's
ways.
There's a lot of ways you can do it.
I just close the SOP. Whoever wants to try that, good luck. I'm not the person that's going to do it.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about conversion oil. I'm talking about
flour.
I'm talking about just there are ways to bring in non-converted.
So something from another state
Yep.
somehow shows up at the facility, and you say like, "Hey, we just happen to have extra THC from this extraction."
Yeah, I mean, so think about it, right? Let's say you do ethanol extraction.
Mm-hmm.
So you get those big blue barrels in. Well, where Disty's trading at 50 cents out on the West Coast,
Yep.
that instead of being 100% ethanol, it's 100% ethanol with a 20% loaded solution.
And then you distill it.
And then you just bring it in, you do the whole process. Now, the commission could find it out if they took a look at yields. So I mean, if they wanted to shine the spotlight,
Well, because you were saying that like the amount of actual distillate-based edibles or whatever distillate-based products in the market that are sold, the amount of allocated biomass to make that distillate, it's more. We're selling more than we actually made.
I mean, based on again. I mean,
Based on numbers.
I just spent a little time. This wasn't. I'm not going to die on this hill. But I certainly do know that inversions are happening.
Okay.
But there's also the economic incentive for that to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean,
why grow it when you can get it for 50 cents a gram in California?
Only because you're breaking the regs, possibly the law.
Yeah. Of course. Well, that interstate commerce, blah, 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 or whatever you want to call it. That's super fascinating. I'd never crunched those numbers. I never bothered to crunch those numbers. We're so focused on our business, we don't even think of it. We just try to do everything we can do the best way and the most compliant way we can, of course.
Well, I got a little more time on my hands now, Jason.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you saw the headwinds. You were like screaming, Calamity Carl, being like, hey, if this doesn't make sense, it's going to start falling. Price compression ends up happening. So you saw some of that in advance. And then how did you respond?
Well, so actually, this is really what confirmed it for me. So I was out at Benzinga. This is 2022, I think. And so, I think we were still trading above 10 a gram. And I'm at a bar, and there's this gentleman from a Chicago, an Illinois-based MSO that has a very large presence in Massachusetts. And we're sitting at the bar, and I'm start talking about price compression. And he's drinking, what's the martini with the onion? Gibson or Gimlet, like the
Gimlet,
little...
maybe, yeah.
I
don't know that one.
Pinky out, and he's sipping it. And I'm like, I'm getting, I'm all worked up. And he's like, Massachusetts? Doesn't matter. And so I start, I'm like, you could operate with 50% margin compression, the whole thing. And he's like, Carl, Massachusetts is a check the box exercise. And that's when I started getting because it reminded me of that J.D. Rockefeller quote that it's difficult to compete against a well-heeled opponent who doesn't want to make money. And he's like, we just need to maintain X% in pre-roll sales, X% in flower sales. He's like, with the 3-store limit, this is not where we're making our money.
Right.
And so we have to maintain market share. And so what happens there? And now you have that downward spiral. So, I mean...
So they're fine just being like, if we don't make tons of money here, we're fine with it kind of thing. Or even go negative in the state just to like keep prices or to get to maybe weed out some of the people who maybe smaller who do have those lined pockets.
I mean, this gentleman seemed to intimate that, but again, certainly not speaking for the company, which is on.
We didn't say any. Yeah, we didn't name the company. I know exactly what you're talking about.
But yeah, so I mean, so what did that do that prevented us? I mean, look, we had the ability to build out another 16,000 square feet. We have in the back of
in that same building,
just the back lot. So we could cut the back parking lot in half. We already put in the drainage. Right. We already have the power for it. We didn't do that. Buying some fancy CapEx stuff. We did not. There were things. So
you had planned some of these things, and you were like, pull it back.
Yeah, because
2022, you were pulling it back. Wow.
Oh yeah. Because you just took a look at the amount of... Remember, that was also a time when things switched from... Remember how companies were valued? There was funded capacity, right? That was the first one. Then it went to multiples of revenue. Then it went to, even all the way down, right? And so, like, the concept of what is the capacity? Like, what is the denominator here?
Yeah.
And it's just all of these licenses coming online. And it's like, okay, well, are they... early on it was difficult because everybody was provisional.
Yeah.
But, like... if you get to final license in cultivation, and there have been a few that have got to final and then, but like once you've gotten there, you're probably still going. Like you're pot committed, pun
intended. So because at that point you probably spent minimum $4 or $5 million in this cultivation just to get it open. And I know there's obviously exceptions, especially in the craft side, where you have like a 500 square foot space or canopy, and it's in some basement somewhere, and of course you can do that and get licensed for it. But if you're trying to grow at any type of scale, you're spent $5-6 million just at the beginning. There's a lot of places have spent way more than that, 10, 15, $20 million build-ups in cultivation. You're pot committed. You're not being like, hey, let's just walk away from all this all of a sudden because of price compression. You're like, no, we're going to find a way to like sell this product because we need to get some money back. This Interesting.
And then that creates, I mean, it's just constant downward pressure.
Downward spiral. So when it comes to, so you see that you start pulling back on CapEx, you're just like, I'm not going to buy this fancy equipment. I'm not going to invest in all this new build out and construction, stuff like that. Instead, you're like, let's hunker down, right? And so you kept your existing square footage cultivation wise, and then you brought in more manufacturing, I think, at some point, stuff like that.
So manufacturing services was our biggest vertical.
And this is services now, because that's one of the things that I think was super innovative back in the day, which I had never heard of, which was I didn't realize there was tolling even happening in Massachusetts until you were like, yeah, we can toll for you guys if you need it. And I'm just like, oh, man.
Well, it wasn't so remember, when all the first verticals, all the first companies had to be vertical. So there wasn't, like, when we opened up, like when we did the first collab, somebody else's flower, our extraction in Mass. And, I remember making phone calls early, like, or Zooms or whatever it was, and there was probably 80 operators, 90 operators at the time. And they're like, why would we even want to do, like, what? Yeah. And so we had excess. So one of the things in our pro forma that Jesse and I did, and it turned out to actually be our biggest profit line, was in our original pro formas to our investors and all of them, we took the revenue generated from the lab would be processing only our biomass. Not like just whatever we had, failed product, send it to trim, all of that, just send it to extraction. The idea that we could make money from doing it for other people, we just figured, one, how do we model that? Because the market was locked.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing to model it after. And also we figured we screwed up in other areas. So this was like a gift to this is a gift to the investors. Exactly. That hopefully this will make up for whatever we didn't understand.
The 4 times longer and the 3 times more expensive.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Exactly. So, manufacturing services, was a big part of our business. Yeah.
So now that you've kind of, you've added that core line of business, what's your split, I guess, between wholesale, tolling, and retail? Those are the 3 core lines of business, I'm assuming, that you generate top line revenue on, right?
There was wholesale, manufacturing services.
Oh, manufacturing services as well. So you'd make pre-rolls or vapes?
We've done, no, we didn't do pre-rolls. So we actually outsourced our that was one of the CapEx items that we didn't.
So you didn't spend on a pre-roll machine, $100,000, $500,000 pre-roll machine.
Well, also because with those things, and just a little squirrel on this, I've probably been in, 70 of the 100 and whatever manufacturing operations, 90 of the cultivations, right? Pre-roll machines, you can't imagine the number. Maybe you can because you've been in them.
Yeah.
The number of times you walk into a room and it's like, oh, I saw that at Benzinga, and it's this giant thing, and then next to it are a whole bunch of workers on stainless steel tables with Knox boxes making the pre-rolls. Yeah. And so it's like, to spend that kind of CapEx, it needed to work.
And it had to be you have to make and work it.
Correct.
If it's sitting here idle, it's not making any money.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so you asked about the split of revenue. I mean, it really depended, right? Like, manufacturing services was always stable. Wholesale, rocking early, right?
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden the credit thing happened. AR.
Oh, yeah.
AR issues. Everything tightened up, and so it's not like
everybody's chasing each other for bills at that point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then so we doubled down on the lab, and so I mean there were different internal pivots throughout time. So it wasn't just.
It wasn't a consistent percentage.
No.
It changed over time, but approximately, like, was it half retail, or is it like?
I believe retail was 40%, but retail, remember, is not as margin. Well, isn't as margin rich.
Of course, because you get Keystone and stuff like that, right? But even tolling, if you're doing a tolling deal, you're probably 60-40, 40 to you, 60 to them.
Well, so since we were, I believe, one of the first tollers.
You're the original toll house.
Don't say that to a fat guy. We were 50-50, and then another company went 60-40, and then another company went 70-30.
I heard 70-30 at one point, and I was like, wow.
And it's like, okay, guys. I mean, so yeah. So I mean, that really, all of it did all change over time, and certainly, in season, because we were by the Cape, retail that bumped up. Manufacturing services, certainly a couple months after harvest, that heats up, and So
So it was cyclical, but it also, depending on the exogenous factors, you don't know potentially what happened. So you don't it wasn't an average thing. It was just like, it was always fluctuating.
So like wholesale was doing really well when we had that first crash in distillate prices until a whole bunch of labs shut down, and then distillate prices bounced up a little bit, and then we were able to take, it really, you could look at trade routes, it's in cycles, and we would just pivot trying to respond to market forces and internal stuff.
What was there a pivot that sunk you? Did you make a wrong move?
It's certainly not one thing. I mean, in the end, it was one thing, and unfortunately, there's buried under NDA,
I'm
so
sure
I
you
can't
cannot
talk about
it.
the thing. But yes, there was one thing that happened that was out of our control, that we had been operating in good faith and all of it, and that thing then happened without giving us time to pivot. And so then the decision to unwind.
If there was a time frame attached to it, do you think you'd be still in business?
Yes, but also operational changes would need to happen, right? So it's not just, so it's like, it makes sense. I've had people say, well, it makes sense, you guys, when you started, cannabis was over, $3,000 a pound, and then it was, okay, but there are companies that are still making it without that, right? Well, if you didn't have this debt structure and all of it, there are companies that do, that have made it, right?
There's some very complicated deals out there that I've seen, and they're just like all these different layers to things. And I that's why I raised under a safe. I was like, if you want in, just give me some money. There's a promise for future equity, and we're just going with it. Like, there's no debt, nothing crazy like that. Although we have started looking a little bit at debt, just because, the rates, even though they're a little bit high, sometimes for cash flow reasons, a little bit of debt helps us to get through those kind of like cash strapped kind of moments. But so there was one thing that happened that kind of sunk you, and you didn't have enough time to pivot, but things would have had to have changed regardless, even if you were to pivot in that direction.
Correct.
Would you have like cut any part, if looking back now? Would you have been like, hey, manufacturing, we're just laying off that entire team because doesn't provide us anything? Would you have shut down retail and been like, listen, let's walk away from retail, let's focus on our tolling, let's focus on manufacturing?
We ran, I don't say we ran, because I just pulled a Jesse. We're talking about Jesse, taking credit for something so Jesse built the model. We took a look and what would happen if we shut this down? What would happen if
so you ran through these scenarios.
Oh my God. I mean, in circles.
Yeah, because you're under the gun all the time, probably, because it is cannabis. So you're always just like, okay, how do we make next payroll? How do we do all these things? Do we call up investors again, or we just like, can we cash flow it somehow? Yeah. All those things run through, I think anybody who's in cannabis who is a founder is probably running through those things. On the small level, MSOs, they have their own books they can figure out what to do with, but man, that is a daily for a lot of us out here. So I guess let's pivot a little bit, and maybe let's talk about maybe some key learnings.
Okay.
So I guess if you were to do it over again, this is a common question I ask on this pod, what would you do different?
I'm going to answer something. I'm going to answer a different question. I'm going to be a politician here, right? So, because I don't want to comment on trade routes decisions if they weren't my decision only. Like if it's a mistake I made, I'm happy to talk about it till the end of time. If it's something that we made as a team, or I don't want to, I want to stay a little bit away from that.
Totally.
But
I just feel like what I'm asking really is, if you had that cash balance in your bank account right now, and you're like, I'm going to start something fresh.
Yep. So one of the big lessons so I've been really fortunate that you and a lot of other, owners, operators have reached out over the last couple of months, and while this is the first time I've done it with a camera, sort of gone through and I've sort of put my thoughts together in the spreadsheet and took a look and bounced a bunch of ideas and want to see, am I off? Is my, one of the biggest things I heard over and over again, this was whether discussing mistakes that other operators made, whether it's whether it's talking about companies that are no longer in business, what it takes to stand up a cannabis company, especially when we did it early on as independents, first on the East Coast, frontier market, whole thing, to be like, you know what, I'm going to stop whatever I was doing that was making me and my family money, and I'm going to go do this. We're all a little fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like there's a little, like there's something wrong with us. Yeah. And then also convincing a village of people to invest, to work, to the whole thing, right? Like, and so, those skill sets aren't necessarily the same skill sets that are necessary to operate and then scale.
If you're into cannabis, entrepreneurship, or just like hearing from people who actually build things, check out High Functioning. It's real talk with founders, operators, and big thinkers. No fluff, just game. New episodes drop every Friday, and you can subscribe and listen at highfunctioning.show. All right, let's get back to the show.
A company, especially in an environment with tremendous margin compression and all of it, right? And so I sort of look at it, it's like, you could take a look at Wall Street. This is sort of parallel. And it's like, you wonder why some of these, and the banks have gotten better in the last 10, 15 years. But like, certainly when I started out on Wall Street, if you look at the heads of most of the major investment banks, they were all traders. Why? Because the trading desks at that time made the most money. Yeah. So therefore you make the most money. But the skill sets that it takes to be a good buy-side guy or even a manager of a bunch of those animals is entirely different than the skill set it is to be the chief executive officer of.
That's different. Yeah, operation side. Yeah, because I also, what's that Michael Lewis book?
Liar's Poker?
Yeah, Liar's Poker. And just reading that book and hearing the stories of the traders, and they're just whatever dudes who can just, for some reason, just trade. It's inherent somehow in them that they figured this out mechanically in their brains to be able to do this really, really well. So you put those people in charge, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay.
And you wonder why there's all of these, these
now
employee
HR
problems
and all that weird stuff happens. Yeah.
And so, I sort of take a look at it. It's like, okay, we spend years building this, living it, breathing it, even before, when we commenced operations, everyone's like, congrats, you reached the finish line. It's like, no, we just reached the starting line and we're tired.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's been like 2 years.
It's already been, it was 3 years. So.
Yeah, it took us 18, 19 months.
So it's like, and you build this thing and then, and I think especially for you, like, good feels is Jason. Like there is 100%. No, like you have.
I had to.
Right. So
you gotta sometimes you have to. And I became social media, just like you said you did. I was out there because I was like, it's do or die. It's go time. Like I got to do whatever it takes to make this work.
Yep. And so you have that. Trade Roots, our brand is tied to me and Jesse. There's a lot of that. The plan was to when Jesse was the captain. Which is the absolute funniest thing in the world because Jesse does not have a boat. And that just made me giggle that like people around town, a town that he's third generation would call him, hey, captain. It was so funny. But the idea was to transfer the concept of the captain into, sort of a most interesting man kind of thing.
Yeah. But, I get it.
But, when you build something and now your identity is tied to it and all of it, it becomes, and especially a lot of smaller operators, you look around the state, you start hiring your friends, you start hiring, family, you start, all of that stuff. And, especially in a market where you're competing against companies that have data analytics teams and like you're like the industry grew up quick. And, to be a mom and pop with a heavy payroll, it's certainly doable and companies are doing it. But you got to be careful that you have the right people in the right seats on the bus, that, you're not being kept in the dark. I've heard certainly that, or you create a situation where, things get stressful and now nobody wants to tell you stuff and you don't have an open flow of communication.
Because you freak out. Every time they tell you something, you're like, oh my God, that blah, 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 let's fix him. Let's go crazy and blah, blah, blah. They're like, I'm not going to tell that dude ever again.
I've been guilty of that, right? So and so just if you take a look, especially at some of the companies, and I'm taking trade routes away from this, but some of the companies that are no longer in the market, that becomes a problem. And I remember one of the gentlemen who started Vineyard Vines, I went to college with, and we had my drum set in their basement for a couple of years after, and it was my buddy lived upstairs, and it was like a dual zoned like warehouse / where some of one of their employees lived, and they had just Ian had stepped down. I don't know if he was CEO or his brother was, but the CEO stepped down, and they brought in somebody, I believe, like from PepsiCo or like from a.
Oh, you gotta get that big CPG guy in there.
And clearly, but I remember asking, like, why wouldn't you want to be? He's like, but that's not. He's like, I founded the company, but let's bring in an expert.
Well, that's
to
what
do
they say.
this.
There's a 0 to 1 person, and then there's 1 to many at that point, or 1 to 100.
And I think that's sort of, if you take a look at some of the companies in this market that are struggling, that's a real common thing.
Yeah.
Well,
just because you love weed doesn't mean you're going to be a good operator.
Right.
There's a lot of people who love weed.
Right, and you could also be a great founder. You could be a great ideas guy, but not great at implementing said things. And so, but the unwillingness to be able to go, you know what, I'm not good at this. Like, I was waiting for the day, and it never happened, that we could actually hire a social media person. So it doesn't have to be a 48-year-old bald guy. Like, this is not, I am not the young hip face of cannabis, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But alas, it never happened.
We struggle with that sometimes too. We actually just hired our first social media person, so we're there, man.
That's cheers.
It's not 0 to 1, but it's 0 to 0.5 right now. But and I think there's a lot of, there's that 0 to 1 founder. They're prevalent in Massachusetts, and I think, to a certain extent, that's maybe where the license cap is a good thing, right? We can get to the license cap discussion maybe in a little bit, but like, I think about things where it's like, well, how do you keep out some of these MSOs so they don't like trample over everything all the time, right? So you have to have some maybe guardrails, or it could just be free market and the best products win, the best stores win, and stuff like that.
So can I ask you?
Yeah,
so
shoot.
what's the concern? So the idea of the license cap.
Yeah.
And again, I have no horse in this race.
Yeah.
Anymore, other than caring about the industry.
Yeah.
And which I do deeply. But like, so from 3 to 6, if you take a look at whether it's liquor stores in Massachusetts or fast food, all of it. Look at market saturation numbers per 100,000 people. We're not even close to what would be considered a saturated market.
I agree.
Even in the most saturated regions in Massachusetts.
I think the number was like MSOs, if they were go to 3 to 6, or anybody going 3 to 6, it would be around like going from like 9% to say 12% or something like that of the market.
And also, there's only 30 some odd that have actually reached the cap to even go to the next. So there's that. I'm not getting the concern.
A couple things immediate. I'm gonna say this right to the camera. I put an announcement out there that there was a debate happening, and I invited 2 guests from the opposing sides. I got 2 people from for the cap increase and 2 people against the cap increase, right? As it's currently written-ish, because things change in Ways and Means Committee and stuff like that. Potentially things could change. But going from 3, 4, 5, 6 over a couple of years is kind of what we were going with. We got 1 person who was like, I'm in, and 3 people who never responded. They said they were in, and then once we got to try to get everything together, they never responded. Because I don't actually have the answer to this. I know the only thing...
Steelman it for me.
As a manufacturer, I want there to be 100 stores. And if everybody could just have 1,000 stores, I would love it. I would just want to put my product everywhere. Of course I do, right? I'm a manufacturer. I have no horse in the game when it comes to retail, right? And I have no intention of ever opening a retail store. I think I just don't want to own the package store. I've always wanted to own the brand. So from my perspective, the more stores, the better. However, it does come from an uninformed perspective, because there are such a thing as other markets where they have a lot of these reciprocal deals. And it's like, hey, MSO, you're going to bring in, my pre-rolls, and I'm going to bring in your pre-rolls, and everybody else is kind of locked out third-party wise. So they're just trading their same goods back and forth to each other, and everybody else is kind of locked out. That's the only downside as potentially a brand I could see. But honestly, I wanted to put the debate together because I wanted to hear a fuller perspective on these things. And again, debates can be somewhat helpful and constructive, but sometimes they can kind of fall apart too. So in this case, we can't get a debate together to discuss this thing, which is really sad because I think it would inform a ton more people. We're still trying to work to see if we can get it done or not. But at the end of the day, if I was to just go for it real quick, I'd be in favor. And that's the first time I think I've ever said that on record. I would actually be in favor of 3, 4, 5, 6, one at a time over a year. I'm a free market person. I really just like whatever happens, and it sucks for some people who lose their shirts. But like all the stuff that you put into it, it's almost like the hemp argument again, which I've definitely discussed a few times on here. Which is, I know Jesse is like, the gas station gummies and all this other stuff, right? Because you guys went hard on the
yes, because that's what he did. He went like
gas station gummies, he smashed it. But it's almost that same discussion. It's kind of like, if you're for the free market, then you're for hemp as well, right? Because it's just like, it should just exist, and you should be able to, the best operators win, or the people who are the most cash, most cash back, the people with the most money may be able to steamroll a bunch of people out there or whatever. But like, it's never been easier to start a company, and it's never been a more, with social media especially, it's never been more democratic. If you can create the best social media, people will buy your product, right? You have to tie it in. There's a lot more to it than that. Obviously, it seems very simple sounding. But I think the best brands should win ultimately.
So brands get it. The sort of the license cap concept.
Yeah.
I think if I were to steel man it, it would be, well, now all of a sudden if you go from 3 stores to 6, but it's actually whatever, but you could do 30% in social equity, whatever the whole thing is, right? That they're going to get together, create a buyer's group, and then they're just
the price compression even more, because they're like, hey, I want it at this price, or now you're not in these 30 stores.
But it's already happening.
No, totally. Yeah.
And it's like, before the commission, and again, this is not really, I don't have a dog in this race at all anymore, or dog in the fight, horse in the race, whatever it is.
Some dog and some horse get together, have babies.
A bear in the woods.
Yeah.
Commission, go after the 9.9s. Go after the buyer groups. Go after
that is a high
beneficial ownership stuff.
That is super interesting. Beneficial owner, exactly. So that 9.9, for people who don't know, 10% or less, you don't have to report that to the CCC, but it does appear, obviously, there's equity, there's documents, there's contracts signed somewhere, of course. So if you were to investigate those things, you'd find a bunch of people who maybe own 9.9% of a lot of companies around here. So I think the person who said it best recently, and I keep on forgetting to invite him on the podcast, is Mark Rosenfeld, our neighbor. He's
for sure. Yep.
You know what he said? He goes, how about we only let the people go to 4 if they can pay all their bills at 3? You know what I mean?
That is a logical.
It's like, oh, duh. If you can pay your bills, you've clearly shown you're able to operate at a level that is cash flow positive or whatever. Maybe there's still cash behind them and VCs pumping money to something. I don't think that exists anymore. But like,
who are these magical VCs?
Yeah, call them up right now. Give me a check. But getting from 3 to 4, it's like, if you can pay your bills and you've shown you're not doing anything nefarious, then you should be able to go to 4. Why not? And I know they're at 3 right now, but as far as we can kind of wrap on that for now, because I do feel like I said on my original LinkedIn post, because we're going to get social media real quick, I said, and I still believe this is true, this is the first time we're kind of not all in agreement. Whereas before, everybody's like, kumbaya, let's create all these great, rules, and let's do all the rules together, and everybody's like in the same groups and creating these rules. And of course, there's, some small diversions here and there. But as far as the license cap one, that is, like, there's different lobbying groups on either side of it. There's like a bunch of people who are all fired up about it, and people who are basically saying, like, social equity people who are like, I need a way to, in a sense, get out, exit the market. Mm-hmm. Because if I've got a good store, but I'm barely making it. And if somebody just comes in, some MSO comes in and buy, we always pick on the MSOs, but some person with 3 stores comes in and buys mine as the 4th, then that gives them coverage in this area and stuff like that they don't have. And there's other social equity people who are like, well, we're doing good, and if MSOs are allowed, or somebody with 3 stores are allowed to go to 4, and they put it right next to us, then that's more competition for us, and that's scary and all those other things. I totally see both perspectives. Do I agree with both perspectives? Not necessarily, but I want the debate to happen, so I want to hear people's perspectives from their mouths, not just me reinterpreting it for them, right? But social media.
Okay.
We said it earlier. I did it as a survival mechanism because selling glass bottle seltzer in a licensed, heavily regulated, compliant, regulatory industry, whatever you want to call it, cannabis industry, is really, really difficult. Because as soon as people heard 2 bottles clink together, they're like, oh my God, they're going to break. And all of a sudden, people were freaked out about glass bottles. We've had many of those people, they're even agents, bad registered agents who are working at the stores, who are in inventory or whatever. They're trying to put it on a shelf and it's clink, clink. Oh my God, I don't want to touch these things ever again, right? Glass bottles, my bad. Cans obviously can break also. But, for the most part, people don't get as worried. I think we spent around $250,000, $300,000 in CapEx for bottling, the whole bottling line and stuff like that. And then we probably made $50,000 worth of seltzer sold in wholesale price. So it wasn't this cash cow that everybody was like, oh my God, well, because Levy hit it big. Yep. And then Canned Trip came through and High Five came through on the same time. And I was like, oh my God, they beat me to the market. I didn't know they even existed for the most part. And then all of a sudden, I see these drinks pop up, and I'm like, oh my God. And Sip was here before everybody else. I don't think people realize that Comcan Sip was the first probably drink in the market.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they had a drink, because I tried theirs, or maybe it was around the same time. I actually don't remember my timelines that well. It's blur at this point. But I do recall putting a ton of effort into making these drinks because it helped me so much, and I loved the beverage market, and I'm like, this is going to be huge. But when it didn't pan out, I was like, all right, we got to figure something else out. And so we started working on different formulations and stuff like that. In the meantime, I'm going to the gym every single day because I'm stressed out of my mind. I can't sleep, so I came up with the sleep formula, which we eventually end up launching, which works still wonders to this day for me. And we sell it under the Good Vibes logo now, which is a 1-to-1-to-1. Knocks me out every night. I wake up perfect. Awesome. But that was the reason why we developed that product, was because I need sleep at night. And if I need to sleep, then I don't want to just buy some random person's gummies. Why can't we make that product? Anyway, so we have the beverage enhancer, we've got the sleep formula, stuff like that. I'm working on it every day. I'm on social media every day. I'm putting a reminder in my app, in my phone, that says every morning at 9 a.m., post something. Mm-hmm. I don't care what it is, just post it. And then eventually I grew to 1,000 followers, and then 3,000, and then 5,000, and all of a sudden I'm over 10,000. I'm like, this is crazy. So right around 10,000, I just stopped because everything was fine again. I kind of survived enough. You know what I mean? I was like, God, because that was almost kind of like that cathartic. I just get to get shit off my chest, but I also want to do it in a way that's entertaining and captivating, as well as something that's going to get our brand in front of buyers, mm-hmm. right? Because we knew we had a great product, but getting in front of buyers is always the hard thing. And I know there's Flower Expo now. There's a new one from MJ Ventures, or Marijuana Ventures. They're putting a show together September 3rd and 5th in Worcester. They're doing one-on-one meetings between buyers and brands, which is actually super interesting.
Interesting.
So that's a new one. Shout out to them. This should air before that, I'm hoping. And then we are probably going to participate. It'll be on the newsletter too, Jason's highlights, so you'll see it come through. But long story short, we have better ways to connect now versus just cold calling and showing up to the store. Mm-hmm. But social media for me was a tool for me to get past all the anxiety and stress that I was facing at the time. That was kind of how I just got us out as best as we could all the time. Your social media, why did you start posting?
So, when we started, Jesse's traditional market background, he was a wholesaler for years. and then started a small craft grow as a registered caregiver legally in Mass. And he grew, and his partner and who's head grower, Carl, grew some really good fucking weed. And so we started, and sort of the ethos was good weed sells itself. So therefore, the amount of money allocated towards marketing, branding, and all of it was ad hoc at best, and I never had a budget. And so it was like, okay, well, what can I do for free? And, took a look, and it was like, okay, well, Instagram, there was a lot of, that was consumers, that was bud tenders, but they're not making the decisions. Who's making the decisions, and how do I reach them?
Right.
And so, I started posting on LinkedIn just the way I talk and think and all of it. And I guess some of that crazy people resonate with, and just sort of became a thing. And so, when before we shut down, if you took a look and used LinkedIn competitor analysis and take the top 10 cannabis companies by market cap, so Pubcos, take off IIPR, and so pure leaf touching.
Yeah, plant touching.
And then put trade routes as number 10. We were consistently between 1 and 3 for engagements. And that's, Cureleaf has, 60,000 followers or whatever. We had, I don't even know what we had at the end. But so, I was able to create engaging content. And yeah, some of it, there are, the scheduled posts that are, targeted for, have I ever, I remember your former coworker, Matthew Harold, would talk about how creating the flywheel effect, and if you post it this time and then have 3 of your people do a thing and it was like, it comes in here, I go, and then
you send it.
And then send it. There's some that there's more thought, and there's some, that I want to reread and all of it. But, and that was really, it was, it's funny. So, we go to one of the first NECANs 2019 or whatever. And it was like me and Jesse, nobody knew who we were, which rightfully so. We were nobody.
Yeah.
We're going along with insurance agents to parties and the lighting
vendors,
yep.
LEDs.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like, I'll listen. So I felt like we were it's like when you go to sit in one of those timeshare meetings so you can get the free dinner or whatever. It's like, what am I doing? So, and then next one, okay, so now we're getting invited to our own stuff, and, and then we head out to Vegas, and it was 2022. And we're staying in, I think, the Strat or somewhere.
The Strat, love it.
Yeah, the where the room fees are higher. Yep, $35 a night. Yep, that was exactly it.
I've stayed there.
And yeah, we so dumb. We decided to stay in a smoking room, figuring that not that I smoke cigarettes, but figuring whatever we would do.
Right.
And we both got that the smell. I think the smell of the old cigarettes in that room is still in my. Anyway, we're walking to the convention center because we hadn't figured out the monorail yet.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, out of this cab, we hear, Carl, and it was my name first. Just for the record, looking at the camera, it was my name first. Carl, Jesse, and it was one of the cannabis influencers in Mass was driving the thing. It was but we were so concerned, will anybody know us? And we show up there, and it was people from the West Coast, and that's when that was the first time I realized, my little musing that I'm typing as I'm making cacio e pepe for dinner, drinking a glass of wine, giggling like a dum-dum, people are actually reading it.
Yeah.
And then if you also have looked at any of my content recently, I forget also. So it's a constant thing. But
yeah. And I think that's for a lot of people who are starting out or trying to maybe even start their first brand, whether in cannabis or not. It's funny how that consistency does pay off. That consistency paid off dividends on top of dividends for me as well, because I'd go to a NECAN and there'd be 10 people in line to talk to me. I'd be like, this is crazy. I've never seen anything like that. So social media has that effect on people. My posts were getting, on average, 10,000 views.
Yep.
Now, if you think about that, and this is what people always say, or I've heard other people say, is that imagine an auditorium of 5,000 people, and they're there to hear you speak. That's a lot of freaking people to be in front of. It's you don't realize, I got a couple hundred views. There's a couple hundred people who actually hopefully read most of it, right? Or maybe wrote partial of it, if it was entertaining enough, especially. But if you're just consistent and you're doing it on a daily or you're doing it on a schedule and you're posting whatever you're posting, but here's the thing, is like there are specific trends to tap into. There are specific things on LinkedIn. If you want to catapult yourself, there's ways to do it. I never really bought into too many of those things. The easiest post in the world is job posts. Do you know why? Because LinkedIn prioritizes those posts because people are always looking for jobs. They have job boards, they have open to work badges and stuff like that. If you just talk about jobs and say, we're hiring or something like that, that goes pretty well. But or if you say like, I think Alice Moon just put a thread up, who was obviously a cannabis influencer, put a thread out like, I think 3 months ago or something like that at this point, that still has like thousands and thousands of comments on it at this point, because it's literally like, hey, let's all get together. Let's talk about who's hiring and who's, looking for work or whatever. And it's just like, those are just easy kind of posts to get done. So there's ways to catapult yourself into the stratosphere, like Seth Yakatan. Like he can do those posts. He can brand his posts. He's doing a concerted effort to actually make that happen, which is kudos to that dude, right? Because he came out of I was like, who the heck's this guy? You know what I mean? He's beating my views now, and I'm like, oh my god, who's that guy?
Clacking quartz together and
whatever.
turquoise.
Exactly, all this stuff on. But there, you can do it, and you can be really successful. But you got to figure out. I think more importantly, I actually take the reverse approach. Who are you trying to attract, and focus your content on that? So in my case, I was trying to attract buyers, right? So I was very consistent with throwing in 1 or 2 more direct buyer posts a week out of like the 5 to 6 I would do. Sometimes I do Saturdays. Out of the 5+ posts I do a week, there'd be like 1 or 2 that are very much directed at buyers, just to make sure that they understand like our value proposition and why they should bring us in and blah, 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 or like do a flavor launch or whatever, things like that. But you've also gotten into a little bit of a little sparring match or two, maybe on LinkedIn.
Couple.
Yeah.
A couple. 1, 2,
One.
2.
There's one that I can think of. I'm not sure. What's the second one then? Because I think
The first one was with an insurance company that wouldn't let us go.
That's right. I remember that post. That's the crazy thing about LinkedIn. I actually remember that post.
Although there's
How did that get resolved? Did they be like,
it got resolved. We'll just leave it.
Okay.
But what I will say is, so there was a post I did. I was sitting in Jesse's office, and we would just get, I'm sure you too, get shipped just boxes of random packaging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I see this box, and it's open, and I forget if it was like Sesame Street. It was like geared towards children. And I took a picture of it, and basically it was like do better. Like it was something. It was just truly like on the way to lunch, not thinking of it.
Yeah.
Get back from lunch, and I look at my phone. 30,000 views.
Yeah.
In like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
The owner reached out when it was at 60. And so apparently the packaging wasn't, it was just their designers fooling around. It wasn't whatever. And so
they must have learned something from that.
I mean, it was like, I did not want to scroll. And he was absolutely lovely, reached out, explained like whole thing. But it was like, that's why it's things I got to realize, like, okay, you've got to be a little careful.
There's definitely power there. And that's why I keep on going back to the fact that, like, if you were to start over, like, would social media be part of your, like, from the beginning? Yes.
And I'd be more concerned. I would put more thought as opposed to just, these are Carl's thoughts. And, now that does tie me and Jesse to the brand and the whole thing. And really, I sort of viewed, if you asked what my goal was, it was to create a bunch of co-conspirators, like a bunch of evangelists, like people that want to work with trade routes in whatever, because we lived across the supply chain in whatever that was.
That makes sense.
As far as spats, I mean, there was the recent one.
So, but I think like there's obviously a lot of attention gets paid on that one. But going back to that first spat really quickly, because we're not going to name any names, but there always are a bunch of vocal people who are like, name names, right? Because there was a post just yesterday about some MSO, right, that maybe has laid off a bunch of people recently in the market. This is this isn't going to air right away. So,
gotcha.
You can look back maybe on LinkedIn and find that post. But people were like, name, who is it? You got to name names and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, that's a slippery slope to actually name names. Mm-hmm. And it really depends on the type of person, right? So some people are very comfortable being like, it's this person, right? Mm-hmm. So you get to a certain point where you just are fed up You're like, I'm going to put this person on blast because it's gotten to the point that you have to, kind of thing, right? So that's what I think of the first post, where it's just like, I had to name names at some point.
And I sent an email saying,
Yeah.
I am going to do this. And they got renewed. It was the dumbest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And so just finally, now I didn't quite realize how much that reverberated because I was at, was it MJ Biz, and met one of the owners of one of the big cannabis, I don't know where they live in the insurance brokerage or if they're, but they take on
Who
the
knows?
risk.
Yeah, there's like layers to insurance.
But this person was like, I know you, and then started laughing. And apparently in the insurance space, that kind of got some big ripples.
Yeah, there's definitely ripples for that one. And I think people who know you, and just from my perspective, when I saw that, I was like, fuck that guy. Not you, but the guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck that guy.
It was
If
just
Carl has to
weird.
go to the point where he has to put this person on blast, I'm never fucking worth that dude again. So like, I don't, in you, the follow-up post, you might even done a follow-up post, hey, it actually got resolved amicably, probably got 0 views, even if you did.
No, I didn't, because I received, so instead of resolving the problem, they sent a cease and desist. I have it I have it framed. It's on my, was on my wall in my
Love
office.
that. Frame it, yeah.
And then finally, so I will tell you how it got resolved. I reached out to a buddy who's in insurance, and I said, I need you to tell me, if I want to be the worst client in the world, how would I do it? And he goes, well, you do this thing. And so, and he said, ask for it monthly. So I asked for it weekly. But apparently it's not the broker that does it. It was my buddy Eric. And so Eric calls me up and he's just laughing. And he's like, dude, you're an evil genius, but this is... And so finally that got them to back off. And they got compensated and
It's done.
They're done. But
Yeah, and so, but it's one of those things where I was like, if Carl had to call this person out, that's so bad. Like, I'm never doing business with this person ever again, kind of thing. And I haven't heard much of that from that person in a while, actually, which is interesting.
I wish him well.
So, anyways, moving on, the other spat, which is more frequent, was about remediation, I believe. So,
And pre-mediation, the entire artificial treatment of cannabis.
and this is a hill that you're willing to die on, apparently, because you definitely took it to a level with this other person. What?
Yeah, so
Talk me through this whole remediation thing, or pre-mediation.
I'll just explain to you how this
I'm not
happened. So I'm not a psycho, right?
Yeah.
So we were at it was Jeff from Garden Remedies would do the CEO roundtables.
Cannabis CEO sumo.
Yep.
Yes, yes.
And so we're at one of them, and it's like a bunch of friends. It was great, as they are, right? And you might have been at this
there.
one.
I was literally there.
At the,
I wasn't part of the conversation.
the
But I
one
think I
where
had
it was like
just
a
left.
darker bar,
Yep.
not the. Yep.
I remember you because I remember it was the other guy was right next to me too.
And so this gentleman who owned an outdoor farm, I don't think he's in the industry in Mass anymore, but owned this outdoor farm, just proceeded to basically tell me how dumb I am to have indoor farming, how and it costs per pound, and then it's also talking about like crystals and metaphysics and this whole thing, and just so sanctimonious, and talking about and bragging about it. He has this machine called a rad source. He wrote an article about it. Someone who wrote an article about him about this machine, and I didn't know what any of this stuff. I know Jesse said we would never remediate. If anything fails, we just send it to the lab, chemically extracts it.
Yeah.
There's no
Cleans it all up.
Yeah, there's no this.
You blast.
A clean distillate from failed flower and distillate from non-failed flower is that the end
Same.
product is the same.
Yeah.
And so because we have a lab, we were just lucky that we didn't have to do any of that stuff. And so, but this guy just got under my skin so much. And, I'm part Italian, part Spanish Basque, like just that stupid anger. And so
Italian and Basque.
dude.
You're a fireball.
So and so I just start researching it more, and then meeting people, and then talking to chief science officers, former chief science. It was like, and then taking a look and going, okay, wait a minute. And, because we did a lot of manufacturing services, I got to see, it used to be we would get a ton of failed flower. Then all of a sudden we would only get trim. And it's like, well, where is that going? And then the CCC put out the data stating that, it used to be that, 10% of flower failed. And then this last year was 7.5. Now, a particular lab also was testing 25% of the flower and had near 100%. So I don't know quite how that worked with all of that, but our assumption was they're using these devices, right? And so I started asking questions, and so talking to Jeff Rawson, talking to Megan Dobro, talking to, and then online, a whole number of people are wonderful to be able to share their time. And it's like, so what is remediation or artificial treatment? It's using technology, whether that's radiation, like RadSource, ozone, like Willow. I guess there's some that do it sonically now as well, that are designed to kill pathogens that are present on something. So RadSource is used in agriculture, strawberry, I don't know if particular fruit, but it's used all over. The technology it's safe. It doesn't make your products glow. It's not.
When people think of radiation, they think, it's a nuclear experiment or something like that.
Yeah, this isn't 3 Mile Island. It's, it's like, it's not like operators are getting sick using it. If that were the case, right? Like, so, I mean, we got to be careful. But, these things are designed and are pitched, and were pitched to the Canadian government, as a kill step. So the idea is, this is agriculture. You have a clean space, but sometimes shit happens. So therefore, if you use whatever this technology is, it'll prevent anything, and then you're good. And then each technology claims that it doesn't affect the end product.
Right, exactly.
And that's the real pitch. Yes, we kill 99% whatever, but it doesn't destroy terpenes, doesn't cleave aldehydes, doesn't, whatever the things are, right? But what it's not designed to do, which is what it's being used to do, is taking an unclean environment that pumps out all unclean stuff and then treats it so, because the way that the testing works, my bro science understanding, is it looks for living pathogens. Yeah. Now, if I remember asking Megan, we were having Commissioner Roy come. I've been in a seat of some heavy hitters here, Jason. Yeah. Commissioner Roy was coming in for a tour as part of a CBA thing, and so and now I had my bug up my butt about this remediation stuff, and so I asked her, "Can you get me a picture under a microscope of cannabis that failed, and then was treated, and she laughed. She's like, "It's the same picture, Carl."
Yeah.
I'm like, I want people to see that, because just because this stuff isn't alive doesn't mean all of the excrement, all of the stuff you smoke, and now have there been studies done on inhaling dead mold? Of course, none of it's good.
Yeah.
There have been no studies done on cannabis. So really, where, I can sort of look at it two ways. There's the, ew, gross, people are using this for medical purposes,
so people's medicine.
Right, there's that. Then there's also, there's the business case, but from just a consumer standpoint, and I know John Nathan publicly has talked about how he gets headaches every time he smokes a remediated product. Is
it marked remediated at that point? Does it have to, as a RadSource, have you used RadSource?
So up until June 16th, and this, you're talking about social media, when when we closed, for a period of time, I was not allowed to comment on anything.
Right.
Or I wasn't allowed to comment on trade routes. And therefore, if I can't talk about the thing, I can't talk about other things.
Yeah.
And so, we had been advocating strongly for this artificial treatment language to be put in, and the commission did. And so what it states is, so I think everybody had to sign, operators got RFIs, had to sign an affidavit stating, do you use any of these? I'm going to use the artificial treatment term, but whether it's, so difference between remediation and premediation. Remediation is product fails for mold and mildew, and we can discuss whether the 10,000 threshold makes sense, or is it 100,000. Right. Jeff Rawson, who I'm on the board of the ICS with him, he seems to, or not seems to, he believes that it should be raised to 100. I defer to him. I'm not smart enough to know.
And that's microbial content.
Correct.
Yeah. So 10,000, if it's over 10,000, it fails. But they're saying it's especially for outdoor grows, I would imagine that could potentially more microbial content, and it potentially is that why so then, if it's 50,000 but the limit's 100,000, then it wouldn't fail in that.
Correct.
Okay, so it would have to be marked as remediated if you did extra steps afterwards.
Correct. And then what premediation is just in line. So your facility is going to fail. Before we even spend money on the test, let's just do it. And
So I think for the remediation stuff, what you're basically saying is for a technology that is used in agriculture as a kill step, it's being misused as just to clean up bad product before all the product basically before it goes through.
Correct.
Okay. Because so you take a living thing that's on the plant because of your poor practices or whatever, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of bugs all over your plants, and there's excrement or whatever, or there's like little mites and stuff like that, and you're picking whole bugs, you're shucking it, and you're throwing it into the rat source or ozone or whatever. Basically what ends up happening in that case, if you're just flooding it, then when you zap them, yes, you've killed them, but they could be leaving behind lots of other things, such as excrement, such as their skeletal.
It's just everything that's left over.
So it's the same
a neutron
picture.
bomb.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the technology takes care of actual like you said mites. I don't know.
Right.
This is powdery mildew, all of that stuff.
Right. But the powdery mildew, there's still presence of stuff on it.
It's all there.
It's all there.
It looks exactly the same.
Instead.
And I'm not saying don't consume it. There haven't been double-blind peer-reviewed studies on it, but I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying we should know. So the compromise of the commission was, although we wanted it on the packaging, like Nevada has the Redura symbol, it's in the COA, and I don't know if this is true, but I guess there's either a push to have the QR code on every packaging so customers could see, and then that's at least for those customers who care, they can see it. Yeah. And look, do I know what's in hot dogs? No. Do I have an idea? Somewhat. Do I still eat them a few times a year? Yes. Do I make that the backbone of my nutrition? No. And so, I'm not saying these products shouldn't be on the market. I don't know the answer to that, but what I do believe is, why would you want to keep the customer in the dark unless it's just a business decision? And so back to the feud with this gentleman, he just went online and started talking about things other than the things he was talking about when we were at the Garden Remedies event, and sustainability and all of this stuff. And it's like that you were talking about your margins, dude. So if somebody's going to be that inauthentic, it's like, all right. And then, to be fair, I don't think I ever came at him directly once until it's like, no, you're going to come at me, then I'm going to let you up, dude. Like, and so.
And where did that end up? I think it just kind of trailed off at this point.
I mean, well, it ended with the CCC requiring the
disclosure of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and I think there are some QR codes that are coming through that I know Metric has been pushing that we're trying to get an idea of, because we want to do this, but it hasn't been clear if we can, we've had no feedback. Like, Metric, sometimes you can't get anything out of these people.
Shocking.
So I know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but for us, it's really just we want to be part of the future. If you guys are going to require us to do QR codes in the future, or at least this is the beta run of it, let us be part of the beta run. Because absolutely, a consumer, when they get their bottle of Good Vibes, should be able to scan it and say, oh, here's the COA. And then they can look at it and be like, okay, here's how it tested, and pass, and non-detect, or whatever. I'm all for that stuff. Disclose as much as possible, right? So I don't know where they are on that still, but somebody from Metric, just reach out to our team. We've been asking you a lot of questions about how to participate, but you haven't really been responsive as far as I recall. I can double check my team on that one.
Does that look straight into the camera?
Yeah, it's my camera. That's my camera right there. It's my camera. I own you. But I guess just to kind of start to wrap, where does Carl go from here?
So what I will say, what I'm doing currently, besides helping unwind trade routes, which is, I joke that unwinding a cannabis company is almost as much work as spinning one up. You just have less help and less people are smiling at you. So that's certainly taken some time. I was also, I got at Trade Routes, one of my other jobs was board chair, and we would have weekly board meetings.
That's a lot.
Over 300.
It's a lot of board meetings.
Yep. And so it's a board of 3 plus an advisor plus a couple of people, and everyone's helpful. And but one of the things I was very excited about, even though I chaired a meeting from your parking lot right before I stepped in, is once Trade Routes, we stopped doing that, that I was really hoping that I could forget Robert's Rules of Order for a little bit. And then I get a phone call from Jeff Ross, and I'm out at Michelle's parents' house, and And he's like, you know Jeff, right?
Yeah.
And so when he speaks when he's wants to ask you something or is a little anxious, he'll speak in a higher octave. And so he gets on the phone. He's like, "Hey, man!" And I'm like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "Oh no!" What are you? He's like, and so he asked me if I'd be on the board of the ICS, and I was looking for every excuse possible. And I remember, I actually posted some of it on LinkedIn today. But Devin Alexander being on a call with him was a number of years ago. It was after they got their commence, and
rolling release. Shout out to rolling release. Yeah.
And he's like. And he was working on a bunch of advocacy stuff. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, so how's that going? He's like, said some permutation of like, I don't have time for that now. We're operators.
Yeah.
And sort of that mindset sort of, well, if that's true, then the inverse is true as well. And so, I was spending my evenings being an advocate during the day, helping with trade routes and all of that stuff. But now, the ICS is about transparency and honest data to consumers, right?
So ICS stands for
the Institute of Cannabis Science.
Right. Perfect.
And so I'm head of the finance committee, which means when we look at the camera, I'll be hitting all of you up for money shortly. We should have
our fundraising.
Yes, yeah, we perfect. We should have our 501c3 status federally. We have it state now. Shout out to Kara for her hard work in that. But really, I mean, Jeff put out, and the ICS put out 4 points to the CCC, I guess a number of months ago. One being disclosure of artificial treatment as stuff. Second being COAs on the packaging.
Yep.
Third being, even though Massachusetts has I believe the most strict pesticide testing rules in the country, we also test for the least amounts.
Okay.
And so
our hemp products, we test for more things than Massachusetts right now.
So to loop in what we talked about at the very beginning, this is a great way to end stuff, talking about the concern of inversions. So apparently, and now I'm regurgitating smart
I may be able to answer this, but go ahead.
Some of these banned pesticides fraction very tightly next to THC and CBD. And if all of a sudden you started testing for them, all of this stuff that's maybe coming in from other markets may get...
You'd be able to pop them because be like, oh, that came from somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely ways in chromatography that you can actually see different spikes. And that's how they know chemical conversion happens. Because so anybody who's trying to buy a hemp product online, if you actually get access to their COAs, if you don't get access to the COAs in a hemp product, don't buy it because it's probably really dirty. And who knows what it was run through before it got to you. But if you do have access to COAs, if you want to see the difference between natural delta-9 THC, which is derived from a field you can point to and be like, oh, the farmer's there, versus a chemically converted one, you'll always see in the chromatography graph, if they allow it, spikes of other random spikes that they sometimes can't identify, but also delta-8 most likely. And so, because you can probably clean up delta-8 from your delta-9 THC through for additional chemical conversions, but it's hard. And so I think that's why people just stop and they're like, yeah, it's like 1% delta-8, but anything above like 0.5%
doesn't occur in nature.
It's chemically converted. So if you see delta-8 on your COAs, even though it's predominantly delta-9, it's been chemically converted, just so we're clear. But yeah, so the science behind this, so very admirable. We obviously need more science. We need more scientists in general, but in cannabis especially, because there's so many things we still don't understand. But it seems like you guys are more pushing like policy stuff right now, right? So it's really just like policy change and making sure we're doing things the right way or the best way we can within Massachusetts. Does the ICS extend outside of Massachusetts at all?
So this is really, we had a board meeting last week, and this was actually brought up by one of our board members, and I can't forget who it is. I forget if it was Kate or Anna, but said it was Anna, but she's out of state. Was saying, that we are very mass focused right now, and sort of the reason is that's probably who Jeff knows and who we asked and all of it. But the idea is, yes, this is a national thing. It just, our current core areas of core competence tend to be
localized to Massachusetts,
and most of the board. Although I guess, maybe three are out of state, I think. So,
Well, it seems like Massachusetts definitely needs help. And sometimes I feel like we don't know if help is coming. And sometimes we're not sure who's responsible for change or who can actually implement change, because was it the legislature or is it the CCC? Sometimes we don't know. And they will say it's them, and then the other person will point the finger at them and be like, actually, they're the ones who can make the change. And so there's a lot of that stuff happening. So I'm definitely looking forward to some policy changes.
You're involved in
some, but I think it's mostly from my perspective as an observer, because obviously I want to know what's going to happen so I can kind of pivot if I need to. Not pivot, but adjust my business. As these different policy changes come along. But I am on the MCC. I am a part of that crew. I'm not in Mass Eon. I'm not in the Mass CBA, but I am in Massachusetts Cannabis Coalition, MCC. And there's definitely a policy group inside there. They're always talking about different policies and cultivation. And I'm on there with Megan Dobro and Jeff Harold and stuff like that. So it's all, it's all friends. It's there's people in there and we don't always agree, right? And so that's why even internally we were the license cap stuff comes up occasionally. And my biggest issue right now, and so by ways of media, I'm an advocate, or not an advocate, but how do I say it? I am part of the policy change, right? If you think about it, because I'm putting media out there that's talking about policy all the time. So one of the big things that I don't agree with right now in MCC is the collections things of putting a third party in place to be the person that's doing the collections. Or
wait, don't tell me about this.
So basically, this is actually going through policy review right now. I don't know where it is in the legislature.
So this would be a Beacon Hill change, not a CCC
yeah,
change.
Because, and CCC would have to be a part of it, because basically I think that right now the day term is 60 days. You can go up to 60 days net terms. But if the person doesn't pay on the 61st or 60th day, 61st day, whatever that day is, you can report them to this third party, and they can go on a list, and therefore they're not allowed to sell, buy any more products.
So this is like the liquor, same thing
it's
as
the
liquor.
Same,
okay.
They're modeling after the same thing.
But is the third party an independent company, or
is it? To be. Now, some people have said the CCC should run it. Some people said third party should run it. I'm obviously in favor of the third party because the CCC is already understaffed, according to my conversation with director, the executive director, Travis Ahern. But from my perspective, it's more of sometimes, again, as a free market person, sometimes, and I know people are hurting. I'm caveating the crap out of this, what I'm about to say right now. Sometimes, when you put these rules in place, there's going to be unintended consequences, right? And you just don't know what they are until it happens to you, potentially.
So what you're saying is that the prescription for the problems that result from poor regulation shouldn't be more regulation?
Right.
Gotcha.
I'm not in favor of more regulation 100% in general. I'm in favor of less in reality. But, certain things should be changed, like allotments and stuff like that, going from 5 mg doses to 10 mgs or 100 mgs per edible to 200 mgs per edible, whatever. And I'm, in favor of some of the advertising rules and stuff like that. Again, free market person. I'm like, we should be able to advertise. We should be able to do it responsibly. And people who are bad actors should get penalized for things. 100%. Totally get it. But when it comes to the receivable side of it, it's when you're trying to collect from retailers, I know there's a lot of manufacturers and cultivators who are hurting because they're not able to get paid in on time. And going back to what Mark Rosenfeld said, if we do allow this policy change to go to 3 to 4 to 5, 6, or not to 3, we're already at 3, but 4, 5, 6 licenses for retail, for instance, then they should be able to show that demonstratively that they've been able to pay their bills on time consistently. You know what I mean? And then you can get your 4th store and then your 5th store and all this other stuff. You can kind of prove it out. But that's too reasonable and rational, I think, for a lot of people. So,
but also, I think it's 38 that would be able to be able.
Yeah,
are you saying they are the most egregious of the non-payers? Therefore,
not necessarily. There are definitely a handful, and we're affected by this recent news, for instance, that just came out. We're definitely affected at a bigger, and our numbers when Trade Routes closed, how much you guys owed us is bigger than that. which is a little upsetting to me because they just put in that big order and they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, I never thought they'd come around. We listed them as one of the impossible stores. We'll never get in. And all of a sudden they have place a huge order. And next thing you know, I hear about a giant layoff and all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, they probably just traded us for some, you know how you can just get like, oh, I'm going to get these gummies and then, oh, I'm not going to pay those people. I'm going to get the next set of gummies and I'm not going to pay those people. The next set of gummies. Everybody has 100 megs packages of 25 meg gummies. So like those are interchangeable to a certain extent, right? Anyways, getting off my stool for a second. Less regulation, 100%, unless it has to do with efficacy, safety. Things like that, I definitely think that like there definitely should be really sensible policy when it comes to safety. Now 10,000, whatever the unit of measure is versus 100,000, I'll leave that up to the science.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll leave that up to the science for like whatever that kind of determines and like what's a safe level. But at the end of the day, I don't want to hand my receivables over to a third party necessarily to start like putting a person on a list. Like I just don't. And then all of a sudden it's like, then there's going to be grace periods. Are we going to be withheld? Are we going to be held accountable? So if I don't report them on the 60th day, but I report them on like the 75th day, now do I get fined? You know what I mean? Like,
and then who's enforcing it?
Who's enforcing
the paperwork?
Yeah. It's just a huge. I would just know more regulation. Like, let the bad actors who can't pay their bills go away.
But that also means, I also think of ways how this could get. So, like, for example, we did owe you money. We were also able to make a trade, right? So. Yeah. So
we're open to trades. I mean, for this other company I'm talking about, like, give me Distillate. I'll take it today.
So then sort of that could be weaponized a little bit, right? So so let's say I'm 60 days out, but we're working together in other states and all sorts of stuff. Oh, well, let me just trade you $1 worth of
wipe it out over here.
Wipe it out over here. And so could it create sort of perverse whatever? You probably have to be a little careful when
I know. That's why it's like, I don't want more regulation because I think it's just going to make everything much more complicated than it already is. And we already have so much paperwork to do already. Like, we don't need more. I don't want to put my controller in charge of now having to report people to this one entity and that one entity. Now we got to work with them on a weekly basis or like, I don't like, are they clear yet? Can we send them things? Or I don't know. Like, or we go send an order to somebody and they're like, oh, you shouldn't have done that because you didn't check the list first. Now we got to check an extra place to make sure they're not on this list that says there's a ban list where they can't get any more product from anybody until they pay their bills. And then people who are in those positions that maybe can't pay their bills within those 60 days, but like don't have the ability to barter. I mean, there's lots of different scenarios where we've been very flexible with everybody, right? And people have been very flexible to us too because we vote people too. And it's like, oh, I don't want that debt over my head. I want to clean it up. Right? So, like, I don't know a way. That's probably one of the other ones where I'm probably in the minority when it comes to not allowing the ABCC liquor model into the cannabis model for collections. I'm probably in the minority for that one. But as a voice in this industry, I want to make sure that if we add more regulations, 100%, not everybody's going to be happy. And there will be fallout. And there will be unintended consequences. And I'm here for it. I'll pivot. I'll figure out what to do with it. But, like, I don't want your mess applied to, put on top of me. I don't want those extra regulations. I don't. I want less regulations. It's cannabis.
It's like...
We sell weed.
Jason.
Why get so complicated?
I spent hours last week working on an RFI for things that, and all minor stuff, but it's like, we're not in operation, right? The RFI is, Carlin, the response to NOD, the response to notice of deficiency. The response is like, okay, we're firing Carl and Jesse, like bringing more competent people next go around. Like, it's the commission, and I get it. When we were actually at a CBA, so shout out to David O'Brien.
Yep.
We had a CBA meeting, and it was Commissioners Roy. I think it was Commissioners Roy, Camargo, and then former Commissioner Doyle came to visit. So it was all three of them, and I guess the first time they were ever together. And so I asked Kay, like, so these regulations, right? The 10,000 CFUs, like the 6 ppm or 12 ppm hydrocarbon, stuff. And she said basically what they did was they went through the existing regulatory frameworks and just picked the most stringent things and then asked their legal and scientific teams, can you make it more stringent, with the idea that the future commissioners will loosen up the things that make sense. It's now time to loosen up those things that make sense.
Yeah. Did you ever run into hydrocarbon issues when you were doing it?
Define issues?
The 6 or 12
ppm. So we got really lucky. Our first hydrocarbon extractor, shout out to John Wynn. He figured out the process, and there's a number of processes, but figured out a way to do it while still retaining terpenes. And so we had some of the terpiest live resin that passed that 12 ppm in the state, and then Spencer took over after and continued to knock it out of the park. And so one of the reasons for us why our hydrocarbon extractions were so good is for none of our in-house stuff, and if we were working for somebody else we would, but we never see our seed anything. So color remediation columns. So we wouldn't use clays. So if you notice concentrates in Massachusetts, a lot of them, especially from the bigger MSOs, all sort of taste the same, that sort of lemon sort of. That's because limonene, I guess, goes through all of these clays better, and a lot of the mono lighter terpenes get held up, and so you just sort of get, it's sort of like Starbucks, like just tastes like over roasted, like regardless of what it is, it's just because it's the same.
Yeah, I know that about Starbucks, definitely. So yeah, because CRC, for the people that know, it's color remediation.
Color remediation clays.
And so what you're doing is you can get some really dark material out and you can clean it up so it looks this beautiful golden color. Mm-hmm. And you can repeat it sometimes into the point where it's clear, almost, if you really want to go that far.
Oh, we've cleaned, I have some before and after pictures in the phone of some runs we've done for some people, and it's like, it just doesn't look the same, but also you lose flavor with that. You lose a little flavor. But yeah, the 12 ppm thing's interesting because, we were, from a business, this is where, you alluded to it earlier. It's like, I supported Ron Paul in 12. I'm a principled libertarian, and I was operating in a limited license state for selling a plant. And it's like just the struggle. It was sort of like with gay marriage. It's like, when it was in 12 or whatever, it was like, I think this is, Supreme Court overreach. I don't think they have the right to do it, but I completely support that they are doing it, and it's sort of this yeah.
But that, from that perspective, though, it's so interesting that you come from that libertarian perspective, and then you go into like such a heavy,
and it's just, it's hard for me. It's like, I know.
You're like, it should just, that's why I just keep on saying free market, because I'm just like, it should just be open. And the best brand should win, or the best retailer should win. I'm opening a can of worms here, but you had some competition in Wareham, right?
Some competition
in retail for Wareham.
Yeah, of course we did.
Yeah. So how did you? I just really quickly, what did you? Were you up in arms, being like, "Oh, screw these guys," or were you going on there giving 1-star reviews to them? What were you?
Dude, some of the stories that I have heard. We have, as far as I know, certainly we have never done negative reviews, any of that with anybody. We had one employee from one of our entrenched competitors across town. They're one of the first stores to open up. That made a comment, on our LinkedIn, on our Google, but she was a customer. She was complaining about something, and she kept on coming back. So it was like, okay, she was just upset as a person, that wasn't a business attack. But I've heard people tell horror stories about other businesses saying they were closed, all of that stuff. No, our entrenched competitor in town was Verilife, so they were one of the first to open.
Yeah.
We did have an issue where, and I could share this, but I'm not under NDA, where they tried to split their retail license from their med license, executed a purchase and sale on a building 700 feet from our store at the entrance to our industrial park, and so
they really didn't want you there.
No. Once we were open, they wanted to move and basically siphon off our customers.
Yeah.
And so, fortunately, they applied for a dimensional zoning variance. Kevin Conroy, the team at Foley, thank you, Kevin, wrote a very well-written email, and they sort of backed off. So, but that was really the only, I'm going to say, somewhat hostile thing.
But Verilife, isn't that on a main street?
It's downtown. So the way
You're in like the industrial park. Okay. You're in the back.
Yeah, I know. No, and to be fair, we were in the industrial park. As we were. Yes. So the way Wareham did it was there was 3 different zones: institutional, light commercial, or light industrial, and strip commercial. And so institutional was Verilife because they were right next to the hospital. And so that was the one store in that zoning there. Nature's Medicine was in East Wareham, which is maybe about 10 minutes away. And then there was us in the industrial park. But remember, we also had Ascend New Bedford open up maybe 9 months into us.
Yeah, the outlet store.
Yeah, at a $28 million a year run rate. So I think last I heard maybe, but
still $2 million. Wow.
So I mean, and I went in the store maybe 3 weeks ago, first time ever going in. They do a good job.
Yeah,
they do a really good job. Our store, we were able to differentiate ourselves because we were the only one in the state that you could actually see into a garden, right? Yeah. So we had the window, and our staff. I mean, we had, heartbreaking the last few days. Also having to tell that was a group customers. I forgot customers, but like there was a gentleman who would come in. I'm not going to say his name, but and he would come in to buy a pre-roll 3 to 4 times a day, and it would be like, we have multi-packs, right? And he's like, yeah, but then I won't get to see these, beautiful faces or friendly people or whatever he said. And it was like, our team in retail was wonderful, and they really took care of our customers, and our customers took care of us. And so, it's a lot harder if management is in, Chicago, or management is in Arizona, or wherever. Like our management was in the building,
right?
And our team really cared.
Yeah, I like that. We could end on that, I think. Team really cared. We cared a lot for your team too, so.
Feelings mutual, man.
Very cool.
Thank you for supporting us throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, well, we're here. We're still here. We're going to still continue to be here to support however we can. So, all right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jesse.